The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mecca Abraham. I think we'll give it another minute before we start. We have some folks logging in now, so just hold tight. Okay, let's get started. Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining today's webinar offered by the Oregon Housing and Community Services Multifamily Energy Program. Today we're doing a training on verification protocols. The Multifamily Energy Program offers energy efficiency technical support and incentives to new construction and retrofit projects serving low-income Oregonians. My name is Mecca Abraham, and I will be leading today's webinar. A few housekeeping notes and instructions on how to use GoToWebinar. Today's webinar will be recorded and available on the program website within a few days. All attendees are currently in listen-only mode. If you'd like to ask a question, please ask the question in the chat box on the GoToWebinar panel. We'll do our best to answer questions in the order that they are received. At the end of the training, we will open the audio line for questions. In order to participate in the discussion at that time, please enter your audio pin located in the center panel of your screen and raise your hand in the meeting panel and we can unmute you. Okay, so as a reminder, this webinar is part of a series of trainings geared towards supporting current multifamily energy program participants and multifamily professionals. We will cover topics relevant to both existing buildings and new construction projects. Next month, on Thursday, July 25th at 12 p.m., we'll be doing a training on all things solar for affordable multifamily. You can register for it on our program website. And be sure to register for our monthly newsletter to stay updated on future trainings that will be announced there. So we're starting off our training series this year on verification protocols. It's very timely as we have many projects that will soon be starting construction. And for today, as far as our agenda goes, we'll be going over the programs of verification protocols, the process, and the requirements by answering the following questions. Why does the program require verification? What is verification? Who should be involved in verification? When should verification be completed? And finally, how to complete verification to satisfy the program requirements. So with that, let's start off with why we require verification. There are three main reasons why the OHCS Multifamily Energy Program requires verification. First is to verify measures are installed as proposed in order to issue program incentives and be sure that program funds are utilized properly. Second is to confirm that the measures are properly installed as they're proposed and with quality to ensure that the energy savings that's estimated can be realized. And finally, while verification is a very important step in the process for us to confirm that the measures are installed, it's not just meant to be a program requirement, but also serves to benefit owners, developers, and tenants equally so we can maximize the energy savings benefits of the energy efficiency measures installed. So now let's move on to what is verification as it's required by the OHCS Multifamily Energy Program. So here is an image that some of you might be familiar with of the program process. This diagram is located in the program manual, and the verification stage here falls right after the install upgrades phase and before the incentive payment phase. As I mentioned previously, verification is meant to verify that the measures are installed as they were proposed in the approved program work scope. And the verification requirements are the same for both existing building projects and new construction. And this is the last step in the program process before program incentives can be issued. So with that, if during the verification stage measures are not installed or don't match the approved program work scope, we may have to adjust or reduce incentives accordingly. If during the installation and construction phase you find that the scope of work might have changed, we encourage you to contact your project's energy advisor with the ORMEP program staff as early as possible so we can discuss specifics and next steps to stay ahead about potential changes that could impact the anticipated incentive. So let's move on and zoom in on the verification stage to review what's needed to be submitted. So here is just a zoom in version of the verification stage and the required verification submittal documents and what they include. So these should be supplied by the project team, and the first are photos. And these should be photos of the measures installed. We'll get into more details on how to submit photos and what photos to take later on when we get to the how section of this presentation. And then next is the measure verification form. This is a program-specific form that your project's energy advisor with the ORMEP team can provide to you. It is completed by the project's third-party verifier. We'll also get into more details on the specifics of this form in the how part of the presentation. Next are invoices, and invoices should detail the total cost of the installed measures. This is to ensure that the total measure costs are greater than the project's eligible incentive. And we'll also get into more detail on this later in a bit. And finally, an updated energy efficiency plan. So this is applicable if there is a scope change. So as I mentioned previously, if during the construction phase, the scope of work change, we'll want to update the energy efficiency plan so we can recalculate the incentives and how they might impact the incentives with the change of scope. So like I mentioned, please contact your ORMEP your project's ORMEP energy advisor sooner rather than later so we can stay ahead of these potential changes. Okay, so we wanted to add a note here about on-site inspections that would be completed by ORMEP staff that is mentioned in the program manual. And these are completed at random as a program quality control mechanism. It's meant to ensure installation quality and compliance with incentive requirements. And the program reserves the right to inspect any project at any time. And as a reminder, this is just at random. And for those selected projects, the ORMEP energy advisor will work with the participant to select these on-site verifications and plan with you well in advance so we can schedule that. Okay, so let's talk about who should be involved in the verification phase. From the project team, the key players with verification are the owner and developer. Next is the contractor. And finally, the third-party verifier. This is typically the energy consultant, but it could also be the architect. They're usually out on site often, so a good choice as well to verify that the measures are installed. Or it could be someone else, another third-party verifier. We just ask that it's not someone that's part of the property ownership or team or the contractor company. And from the ORMEP team, the project's main point of contact is your project's energy advisor, and They are available to answer any questions you might have, and they can provide any program documents that we'll get into in a bit. Okay, so now let's move on to when verification should be completed. So verification should be factored during 3 stages of a project. So before construction starts, you want to begin planning for verification once the scope is finalized and we issue the incentive reservation and prior to construction starting. So it's best to plan that with the key team members who would be involved that we had shown previously. So the owner and developer, the contractor, the architect, energy consultant, and other key team members. Second, we recommend identifying a schedule of when the measures will be installed and when the third-party verifier will need to be on site to verify the measures based on the installation schedule. And during construction, timing is really critical here and is key. It's important to capture photos of the measures before they are no longer visible or accessible. And this is more so important for envelope measures. For example, trying to take photos of wall insulation before the drywall is installed and no longer visible. And then after construction is completed, you should assemble the verification submittal documents that we had shown earlier. So the photos, the measure verification form, the invoices, and submit those to your project's ORMEP Energy Advisor. So we will review that on our end, and once approved, we can issue the final incentive. And when planning for verification, we wanted to make a note about maximizing efforts. So many of the projects participating in the program are also receiving other OHCS funding and are required to follow the Sustainable Development Standards of the PDM. And with that, those programs include Enterprise Green Communities or Earth Advantage Homes, and those programs have their own verification requirements. We would encourage you and certainly would accept any of the verification documents that are associated with those programs so you can leverage it for use to meet the ORMEP program requirements. We certainly don't want to add any extra effort for you, so any photos or verification documents that you complete for those programs can be submitted for our verification submittal purposes. And if you have any questions, just let us know. We'd be happy to make this process any easier than it can be. All right, so with that, I'll pause. I have my colleague Matthew here who's monitoring questions and see if we have any questions. And just as a reminder, if you do have any questions, you can enter it into the questions box. Okay, we don't see any questions, but if you're still thinking of them, we'll be taking questions at the end, so you can save it for then. Okay. So now let's look at how to complete verification to satisfy the program requirements. This will include a deep dive of the required documentation with example forms and photos. Okay, so let's revisit this slide from earlier on the required submittal documents, and they include photos, the measure verification form, invoices, and an updated energy efficiency plan if there was a change in scope. So these are the documents that our program staff will review to confirm that all of the improved installed measures are installed as they were proposed in order to issue the project incentive. We'll now walk through the specifics of each of these documents. So to start off with, here is a screenshot of the measure verification form. This is a program-specific form, and it can be requested from your project's energy advisor. It should be completed by a third-party verifier, and as we previously mentioned, this is typically the energy consultant, or it could be the architect, or any other third-party verifier, as long as it's not the property owner or the contractor. So let's zoom in so we can see what it looks like with an example project. So this is the top half of the form, is where the third-party verifier confirms that they conducted the on-site field verification for the property and to verify that the program-approved work scope was installed. And it's form fillable PDF, so you simply enter the blank spots. And then the second half of the form details the verified work scope and lists out each measure, its specification, and cost. And the list of measures and the specification, they can be pulled directly from the project's incentive reservation letter. It's in a similar format to easily copy and paste, or from the approved energy efficiency plan. The total cost, that is something that should be entered into this table and should come from the backup invoices supplied by the owner or developer. And finally, at the bottom, you'll see we ask that it be signed, and you can simply type in your name for an electronic signature and enter the date. Okay, moving on to invoices. Invoices should be submitted to back up the costs that were noted in the verification form that we just saw. So we ask that you submit invoices with the total cost for each installed measure. And we certainly understand that collecting invoices can be complicated and complex. We don't want this to be a burden to collect invoices if the invoices are complex, we will allow to instead submit a summary of the labor and material costs for each installed measure on the participant company's letterhead. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to your project's energy advisor if you're unsure of what type of documentation is acceptable. We're always here to help. The reason we do ask for invoices are to confirm the measure costs are greater than the project's eligible incentive. Since the program is funded through public purpose funds, we want to be sure that the funds are being used as intended. And finally, getting the total cost of the measures just provides us with as much data that we can get on the actual cost that you as a project are incurring to install these measures. This is important data, and it gives us an opportunity to reevaluate the program's incentive structure and consider incentive changes to better cover the costs of these measures for your project. Okay, before I move on to photos, I think we got a question so I'll let Matthew pose the question.
Yeah, we got one question in the question box, and it is, can the contractor provide an energy measure cost breakdown using their schedule of values format?
Let's see, let me look at that question. I'm not completely familiar with the schedule of values format, but if it provides a breakdown of the costs, that certainly seems acceptable based on the description of what you provided. Feel free to send us an example and we can review it and let you know. But from your description, it sounds like it would be acceptable if it includes the costs of the measure. All right, I don't see any other questions. So if you do have any questions, we'll still keep questions at the end. But for now, I'll move on to talking about photos. So the last requirement of the verification stage is the submittal of photos. And we ask that you submit the photos of all installed measures. I'll be showing examples of photos of the typical measures that we see in work scopes in a bit, but overall the photos should be clear, easily identifiable, and then also if there's equipment, show nameplates, the make, model number, for installation measures, the level of installation, and the depth and thickness, or other conditions. So how should you submit photos? So we have two options. The first option is to use the program-specific verification photo template. And this is a program-developed document, and it features tables with typical measures to easily drop in photos and notes. And this template can be requested from your project's energy advisor. And alternatively, you can submit photos in a zip file with photos organized individual folders for each installed measure. We just ask that you please label the photos as best as possible. That just helps to reduce questions and the review time on our end and speed up the incentive issuing process. So here is just a screenshot of what the program verification photo template looks like. It's a Word document and it features a table format where you can easily insert photos and add notes for specific measures. This template, like I mentioned, you can request it from your project's energy advisor. So now we'll look at some example photos of typical energy efficiency measures that we see in work scopes and what we want to see in those photos to demonstrate the installation. Okay, so first we're going to start off with envelope conditions and components. So here is an example of below grade walls, and as I mentioned previously, envelope components are probably the most critical photos to capture because the timing is really key for these photos. It's important to capture these photos before the walls, the floors, and the attics are closed and cover the drywall or other construction materials, and then they're no longer visible. Oftentimes with projects, this is where we find that photos are missed, so better to catch it as soon as possible, and why it's good to set up a schedule beforehand so you can capture the photos at the right time. So here is an example of the photos we would expect to see for below grade wall installation. We ask that you include photos of the type of installation installed, and then a picture of the thickness of the insulation using a ruler. And then similarly for above grade wall installation, please include photos clearly identifying the type of installation installed and then the thickness using a ruler or a measuring tape. And when providing the thickness measurements, it's helpful to zoom in on the measurement so it's clear. And these photos show examples of exterior wall insulation, and if there are different wall types or different insulation levels, and we would just ask that you provide photos for each unique wall type. And here is an example of interior wall insulation with batt insulation. Likewise, we want to see photos of the type of insulation so we can see that it's batt insulation and installed properly within the framing, and also the thickness, which is demonstrated in the photo on the right. And next, these are just some continuing examples of roof and attic on the envelope side of things. So we ask for photos of the type of insulation and thickness using a ruler. So this is roof insulation, but if you had fiberglass or blown-in insulation in an attic, we similarly ask for that thickness measurement as best as possible to capture that. And then here's an example of fiberglass insulation that are installed in floors above unconditioned space. And in this case, while there's no photo showing the thickness of the insulation using a ruler, you can see circled the label notes that the insulation thickness is 12 inches. So that is an alternative acceptable as well. So then moving on to windows, we ask that you include a photo of each unique window type with the details of the U value and the solar heat gain coefficient. And sometimes this is clearly marked on a label sticker on the windows, but sometimes it might not be present or it may have been removed. So if you can't capture the label sticker, a specification sheet detailing that is also acceptable. And with the windows, we'd also like to see, this is more so on, both for new construction and existing buildings, if there are new windows being installed, a photo of the installed window that shows its proper fit and connections to the weather and air barrier. And moving on, if you have exterior doors as a measure, we ask that you please provide photos of each unique door type with details of the U value and solar heat gain coefficient if there's glazing, or just the R value or U value if it's an insulated door, and if that label isn't available, a specification sheet is also acceptable. Similar to windows, we ask for photos of the doors showing that they're proper fit and effective connection to the weather and air barrier. And then the right photo shows the door sealing at the door sweep. Okay, now moving on to air sealing. So for projects that are proposing air sealing improvements, we want to see photos of the air sealing strategies implemented, and that can vary from project to project. So these are just some representative pictures of typical examples of air sealing measures, but we understand that some of these may not be applicable to your project. So here are a series of photos of air sealing that's visible from the exterior. And overall, we just want to see representative photos of the air barrier at different types of joints, junctions, and just the general coverage area. So on the left, an example of the air barrier, an AC opening from the exterior, and then windows from the exterior as well. And continuing on, these are more examples of air sealing from the exterior. So the left shows a pre-door install, the air barrier there for an exterior door, and then the right shows the post-door install, showing the proper fits and no gaps. And then here are some additional examples. On the left is a transition between the wall and the roof barrier. And then on the right, this is an example of a concrete and steel construction of the plank and slab edge. And for wood constructions, I guess an alternative of that would be at the rim joist. Okay, and then moving on to the interior side of things for air sealing. The left, similarly, we want to see examples of air sealing strategies at joints and junctions from the interior as well. So on the left is showing the rough openings to windows and doors, and on the right shows an example of the sealing around the perimeter for the AC opening. And here are some more interior air sealing photos showing more finished conditions. On the left, more window details and the connection of the window to the interior gypsum board. And then on the right, the AC sleeve sealed to drywall. And continuing on with interior air sealing, we have typical penetrations that contribute to air leakage that should be checked for. So on the left, the outlet and electrical boxes that are located on exterior walls, and then the right shows piping penetrations through interior and exterior walls. And then continuing on with other sources of air leakage, on the left are electric panels, so you can demonstrate air sealing strategies there, and then on the right with thermostats as well. So that concludes some examples of photos related to air sealing. With that, we did want to make a note here about blower door testing. Overall, the program does not require blower door testing. However, blower door testing may be necessary for projects with high infiltration reductions where air sealing is contributing to significant savings. So for these projects, we'll work sort of identify them on a case-by-case basis and work with the project teams directly. But in general, the program does not require blower door testing. However, we do encourage you to complete blower door testing and recommend that it be completed, as it's really the only way to effectively verify that proper air sealing is completed and that the savings that you're expecting is realized. And it's also a good way to ensure that your building is properly air sealed to extend the life of your building. However, we do understand that blower door testing is time intensive and potentially invasive for residents in existing properties. So it's not a requirement. And as we mentioned previously, if you're participating in another sustainability program like Enterprise Green Communities or Earth Advantage Homes that require blower door testing, we encourage you to maximize those efforts, and you can definitely send any blower door testing results for the purposes of the multifamily energy program instead. If you're not completing blower door testing, we'd also encourage you to check out some of these checklist resources that are available to visually confirm conditions. This example that we've linked here is the Energy Star Thermal Bypass Checklist, which is a great resource to review. Okay, so moving on to heating and cooling systems. If this is a proposed measure, we ask that you provide photos of the overall system and the nameplates showing the make and model number. And if you have unique systems, we ask for a photo of each unique system. And be sure that the nameplate photo is clear and legible. Similarly, if you're proposing domestic hot water measures, we also ask that you submit nameplate photos as well. And if you're proposing faucet aerators or for bathrooms, kitchens, or low flow fixtures for shower heads as well, we ask that you include a clear photo of each type of the plumbing fixtures, indicating the flow rate. So here you can see the gallons per minute rate noted here. And with appliances such as refrigerators, dishwashers, clothes washers, we ask that you also submit a photo of the nameplate for each type of appliance. So on the left is an example of a refrigerator nameplate. And then on the right, if it's available and applicable, a photo of the Energy Star label is also helpful. And finally, with lighting, for all of the lighting conditions, we ask that you include a photo of each unique in-unit fixture type. So here we have examples of in-unit lighting. So on the left, in-unit recessed lighting and in-unit sconce lighting. So depending on how many fixtures are in each unit, apartment unit, please provide a photo of each unique fixture type. Likewise, for common areas, please also include a photo of each unique common area fixture type. So the left shows an example of the light fixture, and then providing more detail on the right with the lamp specifically. When submitting these photos, please make a note either in the photo template or in your file name of the image of the location of these lightings, just so it's easier to keep track of where these fixtures are located. So in this case, it was noted to be in the mechanical room. Additionally, for exterior lighting, likewise, a photo of each unique exterior fixture type as well. So the left is showing a bulkhead light, and then the right is showing outdoor accent lights. And if you have lighting controls proposed in as a measure, for example, controls in the corridor or stairwell or in common area spaces, we ask that you submit a photo of each type of lighting control in each unique space. And likewise, please also make a note of the space that it's serving, either in the photo template notes or in the file name for the image. So that concludes our presentation on verification protocols. I'll pause for any questions, and I guess I will, while we're waiting for questions, I'll make a note that we do understand that every project is unique and has different measures and circumstances. So if you have any questions on what exactly we are looking for your specific project and a measure, please feel free to reach out to me or your project's energy advisor. And with that, I will check in with Matthew if we have any questions.
Yeah, we have one. So we were asked, do pre-construction photos need to be provided alongside post-installation photos?
So for existing building projects, we don't need the pre-construction photos provided alongside the post. We will have captured that in our technical review with the proposed work scope. So right now, for the verification stage, we only need the post-installation photos. Okay, thanks for that question. All right, I think we have another question. It is asking, let's see, if a photo is missed, say for example, wall insulation, and then the drywall is covered, what are the steps to move forward? So if you do run into that case where you may have accidentally missed capturing a photo, let us know as soon as possible. Our hope is with this presentation that you're more aware of trying to capture those photos, but just reach out to us and we can figure out the next best step to how to verify that, whether it's just confirming with the contractor. Okay, any other questions?
So we have, for a multi-building site, do you want photo/spec sheets for each building or just a typical building?
So if it's a multi-building site, if your ORMAP project is for a multi-building site, and that's how we have reserved incentives, we just need photos for each unique fixture type or unique equipment. If it's similar equipment across multiple properties, you don't need to send pictures across every building. We just ask that you're doing the third-party verifier is doing a representative check of across all buildings. But as far as backup verification, the photos just need to be of each unique fixture or equipment type. Okay, we're not getting any more questions, it looks like. So I'll give it a few minutes, give it another minute in case anyone else has any questions.
So we got another question came in, and it is, do you need photos of the bulbs for all fixtures?
We don't need photos of the bulbs for all fixtures, just for each unique fixture. So similar to the previous question. Okay, thanks for that question. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions come through, but if you do have any other questions, feel free to email myself or your project's energy advisor. Oh, actually, we did get another question about follow-up on the bulbs. What if you can't safely reach the fixture? If you can't safely reach the fixture, we want to have you maintain your safety, so don't compromise your safety. If you can just provide a spec sheet, just noting that fixture, that's also acceptable as well. Okay.
Yeah. So we got another question, which is it necessary to provide proof of recycling or disposal for appliances or bulbs?
Okay, that is not a requirement for the multifamily energy program, but it may be a requirement of one of the other sustainability programs. So not required for our program, but I would encourage it to, well, we don't need the proof, but I would encourage recycling and safe disposal of appliances or bulbs. But other programs that you may be working with may have different requirements. Okay, I'll give it another minute since we have a couple of questions that came through. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions come through. So with that, I just want to thank you all for joining us today for today's webinar. As I mentioned, if you have any other follow-up questions, you can reach out to myself or your project's energy advisor if you have an active project. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.